back to my sewing vlog, The Seaside Sewist. I'm Natalie and this vlog is part 1 of the Sewing Stevie by Tilly and the Buttons. So I shared in my May plans that I was going to make the Stevie top by Tilly and the Buttons, and someone on YouTube asked if I would do a bit of a sew along because she was all cut out and ready to go, but she was, I think, quite daunted by starting, so I'm going to take you along with me. So I've got the original Tilly and the Buttons Stevie dress and top pattern. I think it has since been re-released with an expanded size range, so I'll leave the details in the description box and you can go over and have a look at that. But this pattern that I've got is sizes 1 to 8, Tilly's sizes 1 to 8. So size 1 is a bust of 30, waist of 24 and hip of 33 inches. And then the size 8 is a bust of 44, waist of 38 and 47 inch hip. So I've made this in 2 sort of different types of fabric before. I've made it in a more structured cotton lawn, which I believe I did a size 3 in, but when it is a more drapey fabric I think it can look quite oversized. So for the fabric that I'm going to use for this, which is this viscose that I got from Rainbow Fabrics, which has got quite a lot of drape to it, I think I'm going to go down to the size 2 to make it more fitted. So then the size 2 bust of 32 inches. I'll actually look in the booklet at the finished garment measurements. So if I do a size 2, it's going to have a bust of 34.5 inches, a waist of 37 and a hip of 41 3/4. Now my measurements are 34 bust, 30 waist and 40 hip, but I know I've made a size 2 before and I'm happy with that. What I am going to do, even though I'm only doing the top version, which is obviously the top version here, I hope you can see that, I'm going to lengthen it by 3 or 4 inches because I want to wear this top over a pair of like leather leggings and I don't want it to come up too short. So when I'm cutting out I'm going to need to remember to add that length. So the fabric that you can use with this is, it doesn't tell you on there, it tells you on here, a light to medium weight woven fabric such as linen, double gauze, chambray, cotton lawn, viscose or rayon. If you're a confident stitcher, try a sand wash silk or crepe de chine. It's a really lovely basic. This was my first make, so it's really lovely and basic. It says, with no darts, zips or set-in sleeves, Stevie is a satisfying, quick and easy make. Stevie has a modern boxy fit with round neckline and kimono sleeves, closing at the back with pretty ties or button loop. Make it as a top with cropped hemline that hits the high hip or above the knee tunic dress with optional turn-up cuffs and patch pocket. Throw it on with a statement necklace and you're good to go. So I do like doing it with this tie back. I think that's a lovely feature. So I think I'm kind of going to go all out because it's a sew along and I'm going to do the turned over cuff arm, the necktie at the back and possibly the pocket. I might cut the pocket out and pin the pocket on and then see what the drape is like because it is quite drapey. and I would have to pattern match that. So I might leave the pocket off. I'll have a look. So anyone joining in with this sew along, measure yourself, measure your sizes. If you have any problems or you need any advice, I'm not the best person measurement wise, to be fair, but put a comment in the description box below and I'll try and help you out. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to actually trace off the pattern because it's a paper pattern and I want to save it. So I'm going to trace off a size 2 because I think I've got one somewhere, but it's a bit worse for wear, so I'm going to cut off a size 2 and then I will see you for cutting out. And now on to tracing off the pattern. So I've come down to my lounge where I can hopefully film quite a bit of me cutting out and things like that, even though I might speed it up. So I'm using the paper pattern that you get in with this pattern, and I'm going to trace off a size 2. I literally use greaseproof paper to do that and a felt tip pen. I know a lot of people use Swedish tracing paper and things like that, but I haven't got any and this works just as good for me. So I'm going to start by tracing the pattern off, and if you remember, I am going to lengthen the top. I'm going to lengthen it by I think 4 inches, and then when I try it on and hem it, I can always take quite a bit off the hem if it is too long. But I want to use the I want to wear it with leather trousers, so I want it to kind of go a bit lower than this. Kind of tends to hit your high hip. I want it to be a bit lower than that, so I'm going to start off doing this. So we've got our fabric. What you sometimes need to do is lay out the fabric, with the selve edge, which is the sort of manufacturer's edge, running from top to bottom. So I can usually get this top out of 1 metre of fabric. So I'm just going to lay it down, fold it over. I think I actually might struggle with that, so I'm just going to put my pieces on, play a little bit of pattern Tetris until I am happy with it. So it's not a very wide piece of fabric, so I've then folded it, but folded it into the middle, because 2 of the pieces that I need to do, the 2 big main bodice pieces, are cut on the fold. So I'm hoping that I've actually got enough fabric, because don't forget I've added that extra bit on each piece to make it a bit longer, so I haven't helped myself by doing that. Right, so the 4 big main pieces that I've got here are, I want my pieces to roll up over here as well. I think I've got on. Then I've got sort of more scrap pieces. Right, so today is another day. We have cut all the pattern pieces out. I just want to recommend these A3 mesh project bags which Ruan from the Yorkshire Sew Girl and Tamlin from Sewn on the Tyne have recommended. So these are absolutely fantastic. I've got my pattern in there and all my pieces, my thread that I want to use. Everything is just in this Ziploc bag. And I spent quite a long time the other day just getting some projects ready in these bags, and I think I got them off Amazon, and I got about 8 of them for just under £10, so that's brilliant value, I think. So take everything out of here. Oops. Okay, so I'm in my sewing room today, and we're going to carry on with the Tilly and the Buttons Stevie top. I have actually had a few people that have messaged me on YouTube saying they'd love to see this sew along, so I'm going to try and do it in part 1 and part 2, but I'm also going to try and timestamp it, so if there's a certain part that people want to see, they can just jump to that part rather than watching all of it. I have got Harry Potter on in the background on my iPad. I love watching Harry Potter when I sew, and I work my way through the entire series and then I start again. So I'm on the first one, the Philosopher's Stone, again. Anybody else a Harry Potter fan? I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Right, so there is some pieces within this pattern that needs interfacing, but I'm just going to show you what I do with the interfacing. So 3 pieces of this pattern have to be interfaced. Now what I do, instead of putting the pattern piece onto the interfacing and cutting it out, I actually cut out my pattern pieces of my fabric and then pop that onto the interfacing, the iron-on interfacing, and then cut that out. I find that so much easier to do, so I'm going to cut those pieces out. I just find it so much easier, and I was finding that I was actually distorting my piece of fabric by doing it the other way, so I much prefer to do it that way. So I'm just roughly cutting those out. It doesn't matter if you have a bit that's you know, that it's not absolutely perfect, because you know you're going to trim that bit off with the overlocker anyway. So maybe another question is, do you need an overlocker? I think if you get quite serious about your sewing, it's a lovely way to finish off your garments, but when I made my first Stevie, I didn't have a overlocker. I actually only bought my overlocker when I started up my second Etsy shop, which is making kids clothes, and I just wanted the clothes to have a more professional finish, so that's why I bought one, and then I got more into dressmaking after that anyway, and so it was just a coincidence really that I had one. I bought a cheap one from the middle of the aisle in Lidl, and the middle of Lidl, and it was about £180. So it is an investment, but you know, if you're gonna get serious about your sewing, then you know it's a nice thing to have. So the first step is start by stair stitching the neckline so they don't stretch out of shape. So this is our front piece. So we're going to stair stitch the neckline. I'm just going to check what the seam allowance is. I think it's 1.5 on Tilly and the Buttons. So this, it's 5/8 of an inch. So as long as your stair stitch is within that seam allowance, you're fine. And it's just like a basting stitch, so just so, especially with viscose, that this doesn't stretch out of shape while you're handling it and sewing it. So I need to do that bit, and this is what the yoke, so it is the two sort of neckline pieces on the yoke piece, which the yoke doesn't go that way around. The yoke goes this way, so it is those pieces there. So we're going to do that bit. I'm actually going to change the needle in my sewing machine for a Microtex needle, which I've just bought from Minerva. I've never used a Microtex needle, but this is a very sort of fine viscose, and I don't want the needle to damage it, so I'm going to change my needle to a Microtex needle, and then we can start sewing. Right, so we are ready to now put a basting stitch around the neckline on 3 of the pieces. Now, I've been and put a Microtex needle in the machine, went to start to sew and it just broke straight away, so I'm using a standard size needle and Gutterman thread. So let's go. I'll put a longer stitch on my sewing machine. I'm on a 5mm. All we're doing is doing a running stitch within the seam allowance there, just so the neckline doesn't stretch out. And then on the neckline of the actual front top bodice part, because it is quite delicate fabric, and if you don't do this it can stretch out. I haven't had it happen to me before, but I'm doing this as a sew along, so I'm not going to cut any corners. Right, okay, so it is lay the interfacing pieces over the front and back neckline facings and iron on, but I've shown you a different way that I do that, so I've already done that bit. So the next step is the optional pocket. because of the drape on this fabric, I've actually decided to leave that off. Even though I got to cut one out of the fabric that I had, I've decided to leave that one. So we are now on to the next step, where you place the back yoke pieces over the front bodice, right sides together, pin them at the shoulder seams, and stitch. So we'll pin those together. I think what I'd probably recommend on this is, if it's your first one, maybe go for a cotton or a cotton lawn. It's quite a fiddly process when you're using viscose. So I've pinned the yoke to the shoulder piece there, right sides together. So we're now going to stitch along here on the recommended seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch. Right, so we've done that bit. We've stitched that shoulder seam together. And then it either says finish the seam allowance or fold it to the back or press it open. I'm going to do each step like that on my overlocker. So I'm going to overlock it first and then press the seam open. So that's going to be the shoulder seam there that we've done. So I'm just going to do that on both sides first. My overlocker lives on this top shelf but at the opposite end, so each time I want to do something like that, which is kind of each seam, I need to push this this big sewing machine back over and then get down the overlocker. So that is fine. I'm very lucky to have an actual room to sew in. So that one is pinned, and we are going to do the second shoulder seam. Remembering to back stitch at both ends. So again, so we've got two shoulder seam where you've got the two yokes and then the front bodice.